I'm going to go over how I created these beautiful Y-shaped necklaces. As you can see, the change in the 2-hole slider beads and filler beads makes the whole necklace look different. I began this journey with some 2-hole slider beads that I had on hand, and I was trying to figure out how to organize them in a manner that would work. There's 3 gold and 2 copper. I laid them out in this Y-shaped fashion so I could see how they were going to look in the drop pendant. I wanted to just take a brief moment to show how you could do this with any of our 2-hole slider beads and get a completely different look, but it's just the technique. It's important to note that I checked the hole direction on these before I got started to ensure that everything would actually line up correctly. It doesn't really matter with these ones because they're kind of the same shape, basically a circle. But if it was a teardrop, for example, you had to make sure that the lines were going up and down and not horizontal. Hopefully that'll make sense, and let's get some fishing line and get started. For this beading technique, I always start at the bottom of the pendant. You will link the bottom and the middle together between the 2 holes of the slider beads. Loop a small string on the top of the 2-hole slider bead that's at the very bottom of the pendant and link it again to the middle. Don't forget to add some seed beads or tiny little silver beads in between the 2-hole slider beads. I do this to keep everything aligned. Then I add another set of seed beads and then the next pendant. As you're stringing these along, make sure that you're facing everything in the same direction. Now to recap, these 3 2-hole slider beads are linked together from the very top holes of the bottom bead through the center bead and to the bottom holes of the top bead, and then I knot it together. This will create that 3 slider bead drop that you see in the Y-shaped necklace design. Now we're going to start stringing up the sides of the necklace, and that will include those 2 other slider beads that are up at the top creating the Y. Basically for this design, I just took a really long string, fishing line in this case, to make the entire necklace. I put the string through the top 2 holes of the 3 pendant design and started stringing up the sides of the necklace. You need a few small filler beads before the next slider beads go on. Typically, I'll just eyeball it here, and if I don't like it, I can always tear it apart and add a few beads. For the top 2 slider beads, I only used 2 of the 4 holes, 1 on each side. Here's what I have so far. From here, it's just basic stringing up the sides of the necklace design to the length that you want your necklace to be. I've talked about this in other beading tutorials, but I always use big beads in the back of my necklace designs because you don't see them anyway when they're on. Because I dropped some beads and got interrupted a few times, I just stretched everything out to make sure that we were at the same length. And then I started to add the clasp. The clasp I'm using is a fold-over magnetic clasp with a single loop on each end. I will put the string through the loops and then I will restring it back down about 4 beads. This will give this piece a very professional, clean look at the fold-over magnetic clasp end because we will knot it right here and push the beads over the knot so that way you can't see anything. There are a few tricks to this technique. First, you got to make sure that you pull everything tight before you start knotting, and then you also have to need to pull the knot really tight. Be really careful when you're putting the knot in and that you're not including beads and tangling things up. Once everything is good and knotted together, then you'll just use some clippers to clip off the ends. As you can see, that knot will slide right under all those beads and you'll never see it, making it have a very professional look at the clasp end as well as the pendant end. Here's the behind scenes of the pendant so you can see how everything flows together. And that's it. It's really quite that simple. It looks really complex, but when you break it all down, it's really very easy. And you can change out the 2-hole slider beads and the filler beads to make completely different looks. If you're interested in purchasing 2-hole slider beads or fold-over magnetic clasps for your own necklace designs, the link is in my bio. If you're interested in learning more, follow along.